You've been trying to get to a new, different, and better experience of life since 2020. There have been a lot of fits and starts over the years, but in the past few months, you have recently started to get a better idea of what needs to be done in order to make that new life manifest and actually take action on those ideas. However, you've recently started to get afraid that these actions won't work and that this new life will never come to pass at all, and as a result have tried to rush that process, which has caused some of its own problems, such as arguments, exhaustion, and instability. Well, at this full moon in Scorpio, you suddenly and unexpectedly begin to manage that fear more effectively and embrace a more calm and balanced approach. You also suddenly and unexpectedly begin to feel more focused and determined to do whatever it takes to move forward, even if it takes a lot longer than you hoped for. But once you move forward in this more sustainable pace, you then begin to feel overwhelmed by all the steps you need to take and frustrated that your voice, a key component of effective action, hasn't been heard by those who need to hear it most. Hi, I'm your astrologer, Brittany of Ethereal Astrology, helping you to see the larger story of your life. Today, you're watching your astrology horoscope for the collective for the full moon in the sign of Scorpio, which occurs on Monday, May 12th, 2025 at 12:55 p.m. Eastern Time or 9:55 p.m. Pacific Time. Now, let's go ahead and let's hop right into it. In order to get started, what I like to do first is to place what it is that I'm referring to in this video in the chart so that you can see it and follow along with me. So let me do that now. This video is for that full moon in Scorpio. As a result, I have adjusted the chart accordingly for that lunar event. I know that because I've got the moon here in Scorpio, making an exact opposition over here to the sun in Taurus at 22 degrees. And when the moon opposes the sun, that is what is considered a full moon. And it's in Scorpio because that is the sign that the moon itself is in during this time. Okay, now what is this about? To give you more of a broad or general idea of what themes might come up. Well, full moons are halfway during the lunar cycle, right? In the middle of the lunar month. And because of that, they're a lot about stepping into things that we've been working towards for quite some time or bringing them to full moon, fulfillment here or completion of some sort. Okay, not only are full moons about that, but because they do start the second half of the lunar cycle or the last half, they can also be considered too about ending things or about winding things down as well. So stepping into something we've been working towards and then ending, completing, winding it down here so that eventually at the next new moon, we can move on to the next thing. Not only that, but other things that I want to note is that the full moon is when the moon is very bright in the sky, when you can see it. So many times it also does bring something to light that maybe we did not see before about our situation or some important insight that might be helpful to it. In addition to that, a full moon is also a function of an opposition here, as you can see it in the chart. And it's hard to do two opposite things at once. So usually it's an indicator of decisions, choices and decisions here that might also need to be made, right? Especially if we're getting new insight about our situation and so that we can finish it and complete it and move on to the next thing. So there's a lot of that here that tends to go on at full moons. Now, what is it here that we're trying to step into, complete, and get insights and make decisions about? Well, that's going to be Scorpio because that is the sign that the moon is in here at this full moon in particular. What is Scorpio all about? Well, Scorpio is a fixed water sign. Water signs do tend to have to do with our emotions here or with the subconscious world. And the fact that it's fixed can make those very deep, I might say, very deep to make us really focus on those things. So one of the things that can be coming up here at this full moon in Scorpio is going to be an intense focus here on our subconscious emotions or feelings here that's happening at this time where we're trying to bring more of those to light. What's going on subconscious and end or adjust those subconscious feelings so that we can move forward. In addition to that, I don't know if I had said this before, but because Scorpio has to do with our deep emotions, it can also hold a lot of our fear a lot of our trauma, where a lot of some of that is stored as well here in our situation that might need to be worked through. So not only at this full moon in Scorpio are we trying to get insights about just our subconscious emotions and desires and what's going on there so that we can make better decisions and adjustments based on that, but I think we're also trying to get maybe some insights, illuminations as well about what our fears are, what might be triggering us or holding us back here from doing things that are important as well, so that we can better adjust or complete or make decisions about those things. In addition to that, other things that Scorpio has to do with, it does have to do with change and transformation, being correlated to the planet of Pluto and symbolized to one of the symbols of the phoenix rising here from the ashes as well. And when I say change and transformation in regards to Scorpio, it's not just a little tweak here or there. That's more what the mutable signs do. Because Scorpio is a fixed sign, it's more about deep, permanent change and transformation on a subconscious and on a cellular and very personal level. So not only at this full moon in Scorpio are we trying to get illumination about our subconscious feelings, emotions, desires, and fears, right? Even triggers, things that are holding us back so that we can make better decisions about those or end those and move on. But we're also trying to make some kind of permanent big change within ourselves here and our situation, and maybe also our emotions, so that we can work with things much better too. Not only that, but Scorpio to me as well, again, being Pluto ruled and also having to do with change and transformation, can also indicate to me power, symbolize that, especially where our power comes from within ourselves, being a water sign here too, our own personal power. And I think that's actually why change and transformation really occurs, to kind of get us to stand in our power and in our own right and in our own strength here as well. So what that means to me is not only at this full moon in Scorpio are we trying to get more insights here on our emotions and why we feel the way that we feel, and on our fears and triggers and anxieties that are affecting our behaviors and how we can better make decisions with those or work with those better, but we're trying to get insights so that we can change and transform our insights, our natural tendencies and emotions to stand stronger, to stand more in our power here as who we are as individuals. Not only that, but other things that I want to note is that not only is Scorpio about permanent change and transformation, especially on an internal level, an emotional level, and finding our own personal power within ourselves, which I do think is a huge part of Scorpio. I should also note too that it also has to do with change in an external sense as well. Change, say, with our relationships and the people that we interact with and how we share resources with our relationships, but also to changes with money as well. Scorpio has to do with both. To change those things as well. And I think ideally to change those to match the inner state. You know, external reality is just a reflection of the internal world, especially with Scorpio being a water sign and not an earth sign here as well. So I think we're also trying to get insights on what is going on with relationships and money, what we feel about those, and how we can also change those to be different and better in a way that's more empowering here for us as well and for our situation. Okay. And I think that's all that's just coming up for me at the moment about this full moon in Scorpio. Here, those themes. We are at this full moon in Scorpio, to bring that together, trying to get more illumination and insight on our subconscious feelings, emotions, desires, drive, maybe even fears, triggers, and insecurities that might be holding us back, so that we can maybe make decisions to permanently change, transform these fears and things holding us back, so that we can stand more in our power and then use that personal power and strength to enact positive change outside of ourselves in our relationships and money to affect our inner world as well, and our inner sense of power that we're starting to embrace and embody. Okay. Now, before I move forward here in this horoscope to give you more specific details about this full moon itself and those themes that I just described and how they're going to play out, I do like to go back in time for a minute here before I go forward in time to give you more context about how we got here to this full moon in Scorpio that's going on, and talk about some of the other aspects that led up to this one. And the reason why I like to do that is because there's a full moon in Scorpio every year. That's not unique. I think it's the aspects that happen around it or that came before it that really makes one full moon more different than the next. So I'm going to go talk about that for a minute. Now, I did mention this in my last video that I did for the new moon in Taurus, but I'm going to say it again just in case I didn't catch you all here. I have been, over the course of the past few years, if you've been watching me for a while, been going all the way back to 2020 to give you the context here, but I'm no longer going to go back to 2020 anymore as my starting point. That's because it's just gotten very long. We're 5 years now past that. A lot has happened since then in the astrology, just a mouthful to remember and talk about. Also too, because I do believe that as of the new moon solar eclipse in Aries about 2 months ago, we're turning a corner away from that 2020 and into different experiences. So I'm not going to go back there, but what I am going to go back to is that new moon solar eclipse in Aries. Okay, that happened 2 months ago, and I'm going to start from there for now. I'm going to start from there because, again, that was a big deal. It's an eclipse. Eclipses are big deals. They're starting to change our experience. And also, too, because it was the beginning of a new astrological year with Aries being the first sign of the zodiac. So I'm going to go back to there. I think that's going to be my new starting point, at least until this time next year. And I'm going to catch you up on the new moons and anything else that I feel called to. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. If you want to stay, of course, stay. Otherwise, you can fast forward in the video with the timestamps down below. But I'm going to do that. And to do that, I'm going to go back to that new moon solar eclipse in Aries, somewhere right around here, which I believe was in March. Yeah, I think it was in March of this year, 2025. Okay, what is that about? New moons are all about new beginnings, new energy, and fresh starts. Solar eclipses, superpower, whatever that is, and make that big. And I thought that that was a good thing because it was near the North Node. And the North Node, to me, is more helpful than the South Node. Okay, what was this superpowered new beginning that I thought was helpful that was happening? Well, it's in the sign of Aries. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, also about new beginnings. So there's a lot of big new beginnings here that I'm multiple symbolism about. And I think to note new beginnings that we've really been trying to get to, I should say, since 2020, that are now, we have more momentum to actually make happen. And to actually do, especially with Aries being a Mars ruled sign. And Mars is about action and taking action on these new beginnings we've been trying to get to. Not only that, but other things that I want to note is that Aries is a fire sign, also about courage and passion. So about us having more courage and passion to move forward on a new beginning, perhaps than we had since 2020 as well, and to make it happen. And one other thing that I'll mention too is that Aries being a Mars ruled sign about action and also about new starts can also be about us not only trying to move forward again on a new beginning, a new chapter in life in a very big way since 2020 with more courage and passion, but can also as well be about us trying to move into this new and better experience of life since 2020 in a way we haven't tried before, in a totally different way than what our natural tendency was in 2021 and 2022 and 2023. Just totally different. We're trying a different approach than we've had before. What is that different approach? Well, again, Aries is a fire sign. Fire signs are more passionate. Not only that, Aries is more about ourself, what's important to us as individuals, not society, not what our friends think, not what everyone else thinks, what is finally in touch with us on who we are from the inside. Not only that, but I might also consider it being a fire sign, especially with some stuff going on in Leo. Mars was retrograde there. That makes us happy. That is going to be joyful for us here as well. And also two other things I might say with the Aries, that's easier, that's simpler, that's not as complex and not as drawn out here as well, and is based more on our instincts here throughout the process. So, I think that's my starting point here. We're getting a big new boost since 2020 with more motivation and courage to move into a new, different, and better experience of life we've been trying to get to since then, but hasn't yet happened. And not only are we getting big boost in motivation and courage to do it, but we're actually getting a very different approach to moving into a new and better experience of life we haven't tried before, which is to do things in a way that's in touch with our heart and our individual, not what we think we should do, but what we actually feel and want to do from the inside out. And that's easier and simpler and more in touch with ourselves and our instincts. That is very good. That then leads me to the next new moon, which happened 2 weeks ago before this one, which was somewhere here during right around the beginning degrees of Taurus, which was April, I believe, somewhere around April of 2025. Okay, what is that about? New moons are about new beginnings. Taurus is the second sign of the zodiac, fixed earth. It's a lot about sustaining things that were recently started. And what did we recently start? At the astrological new year, another try into a new, different, and better experience of life with more motivation and with a totally different approach now that's easier, simpler, and more in alignment with our heart. It was about us sustaining that. Okay, not only is Taurus about us keeping on that path, sustaining that, but with it being fixed earth and with it being a Venus ruled sign, it's also a slower sign where it takes its time to do things. Or if not slower, it's a little more easy about things. It does things in a way that's more easy and natural, not pushy, not forced, right? Because it's not the nature of Venus, the ruler of Taurus, in a way that's more calm, more easy, more natural there that was going on, because that's what helps you sustain things. Do you see? Going fast does not help you sustain things because Taurus is about both. So if Taurus is about sustaining things and about going slow, it's the going slow that's going to help bring that together. So it was about us trying to do that here, but with some aspects that were going on, I need to note to that new moon in Taurus, it was square Pluto. It wasn't super easy for us to sustain this new beginning into a new experience of life, doing things in a different way, and to go slow around it. I think there was a lot of fear, perhaps subconscious fear, that if we were to go slow to sustain this new experience of life we're trying to get to since 2020 in this new way, that it was never going to happen, or that something was going to go wrong because we've been trying for 5 years and it hadn't quite happened yet. Here, that was a challenge, okay, and was very difficult, which then leads me now to this full moon, of which this video is for, in Scorpio on Monday, May 12th, right? May 2025, okay, right around here. And what did I say that full moon in Scorpio is about at the beginning of this video? Trying to get insights about our fears, which we talked about, and our subconscious insecurities, and to try to permanently change and transform those fears and insecurities so that we can stand more in our power and make more effective changes outside of ourselves with relationships here and with money. And that's what we're trying to do now, right? At this full moon in Scorpio, to put it all together, to stop being afraid of going slow when it comes to manifesting our new and better experience of life in this new way, and to not let that fear get the best of us and stop us from doing these things that we need to do and making changes that we need to make in order to sustain our lives. Okay. So that's what I'm going to say there in terms of the context, right? Finally getting the courage to try again since 2020 to enter a new, different, and better experience of life here, with more courage and motivation, and with a totally different approach, easier, simpler, more fun, happy, more in tune with who we are as individuals instead of what we think we should do or everyone else is doing. And we're trying to sustain that, but it's been scary to sustain because sustaining it has required us to go a little bit more slowly than we might like, making us afraid that if we go slow, it's never going to happen and we're never going to get to this new experience because it hasn't happened before. And this full moon in Scorpio is about us trying to overcome that fear around going slow through the process so that it doesn't trip us up or make us act funny or make us stop altogether, and so that we can more effectively make the changes we need to make in order to move on. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about here now and today. Now what I'm going to do, that we've covered that, is go back to that full moon in Scorpio itself and zoom in to give you more detail about how this full moon itself is going to play out here by looking at the specific aspects that are occurring to this full moon itself and are happening around it. So let's do that. And to do that, I'm going to place the full moon again on the chart really quickly. Here's the moon in Scorpio opposite the sun in Taurus, okay, which is again about us trying to get insight about our subconscious fears and anxieties, especially if you listen to the context when it comes to moving forward into a new, different, and better experience of life that we've been trying to get to for quite some time, and the speed at which we're doing it so that we can stand more in our power and make the changes we need externally. Okay. The first alignment that I want to look at here is going to be the fact that this full moon in Scorpio is making an opposition over here to Uranus and Taurus, which means that the sun is also conjunct it as well. So I want to talk about that here. Okay, now this can be a little bit challenging at first in some ways, but I think can also be highly positive here as well. Why is that? Well, for one, Uranus is in Taurus, a sign it does not like to be in, and therefore does not function that well in, and it's making a conjunction here with the sun itself. Okay, this is not the best, okay, and can indicate challenges, right? When a planet is in a sign it doesn't like to be in. But even though Uranus is in Taurus, a sign it doesn't like to be in, making an aspect here to the sun, it can be very, very positive at the same time. And it can be very positive because we've got the moon here in particular opposing it, okay, which is called a mutual reception in this instance. And it's a mutual reception when you have two planets in two signs that they don't like to be in. So Uranus doesn't like to be in Taurus. I did explain that. And the moon, I didn't say that, does not like to be in the sign of Scorpio, does not function very well in the sign of Scorpio, okay? But Uranus loves Scorpio. It's exalted in the sign of Scorpio, even though it doesn't like to be in Taurus. And the moon is exalted in the sign of Taurus, even though it doesn't like to be in Scorpio, right? That's what a mutual reception is. And when this happens, it can take two wrongs, so to put it, and make a right. Two things that are difficult and make them work for each other. Now, it usually doesn't happen all at once. It kind of takes a minute to kind of click in and get used to, but can turn positive. So I'm going to give you a negative first, and then also a positive about how this can play out. What is the challenge here that could be going on? Okay, well, Uranus is about the sudden and is about the unexpected here that's happening. And sometimes when sudden and unexpected things happening on first glance, they can feel a little bit challenging here in our situation. Hey, what might this sudden unexpected event, it could come up, it could be an insight. It could also be an event. It feels a little more external being a full moon, but could be either here that's going on, that can occur. And it's in Taurus. Taurus does have to do with sustaining things, being the second sign of the zodiac. And I think sustaining, especially after the new moon solar eclipse in Aries, some new, different, and better experience of life we're trying to get to. So there could be some unexpected event or insight that could come up around something new we're trying to do that could feel challenging. This can also be too with relationships and with money, especially with the Scorpio being involved in this, having to do about relationships and money. And Taurus too is a money sign as well. So this can be some sort of unexpected challenging event or insight that can come up about something new we're trying to do as it pertains to relationships and money in our situation here. Not only can it be that, but Uranus, I need to note, can also indicate restlessness and anxiety here as well. That's going on since it does typically correlate to electricity and things of that sort. So this can also create as well, not only unexpected challenges coming out of nowhere that maybe we didn't see coming around something new we're trying to do with relationships and money that can be hard, but it can also be a lot of anxiety and nervousness as a result of that, as a result of these unexpected, challenging things that are coming up, right? If it's not pleasant and it's unexpected and you don't like it, then obviously this can bring a lot of anxiety there around that here too. Now, another thought that I want to note as well is that this a lot of times will bring both of them together, right? And that's how I've interpreted it so far, the unexpected events with relationships and money and the anxiety. But if this doesn't bring any unexpected event in your situation, it can just bring, and I definitely feel this, like just a sense of anxiety, especially around the slowness, right? Taurus, as we talked about at the new moon 2 weeks ago, is a fixed earth sign ruled by Venus. It's also slow. So if nothing challenging is actually happening in your situation that's making you anxious and nervous, then it can also just bring this lingering worry or fear that something unexpectedly bad is going to happen, especially because we're going so slow. Things are just taking their time to transform or to be different or to move forward here in the way that it is that we need. So it can do a lot of that. Not only that, but again, the moon doesn't like to be in Scorpio either, where it is. And the reason why the moon doesn't like to be in Scorpio is because the moon is a lot about our emotions, and our emotions like to feel calm. And Scorpio is very intense, right? That's a traditionally stereotype associated with very intense. So this can also bring a lot of intense emotions, including fears and insecurities, up to the surface here as well, to be felt very, very strongly. Fears and insecurities around anything unexpected that may happen that you're anxious and nervous about, and fears and insecurities about anything unexpected that you worry may happen, whether it is going to happen or not, right? here as well, and about the speed of things that can also come on, and again, can come on very strongly and very intensely. Worry, fear, anxiety, all of that. Okay. But even though that's the case, remember, this is a mutual reception, specifically between the moon and Uranus, right? Because they're in signs that the other likes that's going on. So even though there is this unexpected, challenging event with relationships and money, right, that may or may not happen, and a lot of anxiety and nervousness around it, and fear and insecurity intense, something good is going to happen, or we're going to be able to get a handle on it in a more positive way, and work with it in a more positive way as well, with the mutual reception here. What might that more positive way be? Well, sure, Scorpio, when a challenge, can indicate intense fear and intense subconscious emotion that's really hard to handle here, and can make us act really funny. But even though it can bring that, Scorpio, when positive here, can bring inner strength, right? Inner power, and transmuting and transforming these negative emotions for the better here, and can even bring more drive or more motivation or more courage as well in our situation, with Scorpio correlating to Pluto, and the ancient astrologers also had it correlated to Mars before Pluto was discovered. So it can bring more courage, can bring more drive, a lot of that stuff here as well. Not only that, but with this moon aspecting Uranus and Taurus, when positive, can bring stability. It can bring more security. It can bring more confidence here about our situation, and about how to handle it, and about what needs to be done. And again, with Taurus being slower, more confidence in a slower approach, or just more of a steady hand, when it comes to dealing with the things in our life, like relationships and money, that it is that we need. Not only that, but Uranus too can bring unexpected things. Again, first challenging, next positive, unexpected insights to help us figure out how to fix our situation, right? How to not let these unexpected events roll us over, how to get on top of them, how to stand in our power, unexpected insights and solutions. Maybe I should also note that Uranus can be very solution oriented, because it's very forward thinking here on how to resolve some of these challenges that it is that we may be having here as well in our situation, right? With more of the confidence and the drive and the steady hand in order to do it. Here too, which I think can be helpful as well. And I think that, if I can be honest, a lot of this unexpected insights about how to fix our situation that we're getting is not to do things faster, okay? And it's not to push things along more, because there's been a lot in astrology that's about us trying to get away from that. Okay, over the course of the past few weeks, and really over the course of the past few years as well. So this is not us trying to push more. That's not the insight that we're getting, especially not with Uranus and Taurus. The insight that I think we're getting here is for us to be more confident with the slower approach, okay, or with things just taking their time, however they're going to play out, and more driven with the Scorpio to do that slower approach, however it's going to take out, and more confident in that approach, and to not leak our power while we're doing things in this calmer way that's going on throughout the process, and to transform to more fully embrace that. Okay, so I think that's the first thing, and this is the most important thing that's really going on here at this full moon in Scorpio that I want to mention, is that we are at this full moon in Scorpio really trying to better understand, illuminate any fears and insecurities that we may have around sustaining some new chapter in life that we've been trying to get to for quite some time, and some new behaviors in a slower way, and in a more calm and natural way as we go about it. And at first, with this full moon in Scorpio, it's a little bit hard for us to do. It's a little bit hard for us to understand our subconscious fears and our subconscious emotions, and to better work with those and transform those, because there either may be actual unexpected events happening with relationships and money that are making us anxious and nervous and triggering more fears, or if there aren't actual unexpected events, there may be a lot of fear of an unexpected event with relationships and money happening that's also triggering more fear and more anxiety anxiety than maybe we had 2 weeks ago at that new moon, here about our situation that can feel very intense and very unstable and insecure and make us want to push our situation more. But even though we're feeling very uncomfortable and having a very hard time being calm and at ease in our situation, we suddenly and unexpectedly, without like just as fast as the anxiety happened, we suddenly and unexpectedly start to get insights about how best to calm ourselves down and how best to deal with any anxiety or challenging unexpected event with relationships and money that's going on, which I think is to be more okay with a slower process. And we start to stand more in our personal power around our situation and however long it takes as well, which helps us to handle the relationships and money and any situation more effectively or more calmly with more confidence and stability here that's going to be more beneficial for our situation. Okay, that then leads me now to the next alignment that I want to mention, which is also going to be directly related to this full moon in Scorpio, because not only is this full moon in Scorpio making an opposition to Uranus and Taurus, it's also making a trine over here to Saturn in the sign of Pisces, which I need to note is also making a sextile over here to the sun in Taurus here, since all of this is connected. What is this about? Now, this to me is a positive thing here. Oh, I should also note the north node's involved. So the full moon's making a trine to both Saturn and the north node, right? Which is sextiling the sun. Now, this to me is a very positive thing, okay? The first alignment, the opposite to Uranus, was a mixed bag, hard at first, then unexpectedly better. This to me is way more positive in a more consistent way. So this to me is good. The reason why I consider this positive is because it's connecting to the full moon by a trine and a sextile here. Trines to me aren't always positive, but I interpret positively more often than not because they involve planets in signs of the same element, in this case, water. And because we've got the sextile, which I always interpret positively on the other end, protecting it. So this to me is a very good thing. What is the thing that's going on here that I think is meant to be helpful? Okay, well, remember, the moon in Scorpio, which is a part of this, has a lot to do with these very intense emotions that we've been feeling, fear and anxiety around relationships and money, and us sustaining some different approach and trying to change those here. That's going on, that we're getting a handle on, right? That we're suddenly getting a handle on. And it's making the trine to Saturn. Saturn, to me, when positive, which is how I'm going to interpret it, is like the glue that keeps things together, that also can contribute to, say, having more of a steady hand in our situation, or being able to work with things more effectively, or maybe another word, manage things, right? Saturn's correlated to Capricorn traditionally about managing things, getting things in order here so that they're less chaotic and so that they're more, I don't want to say under control. I don't know if full control is what we have, but so that they're just a little bit better here. So I think this is a positive thing, helping things come together instead of them deteriorate and fall apart more, okay, which to me is very good. Not only that, but Saturn's also in Pisces still, in the north node there too, and Pisces to me is about our intuition and also too about trust, hope, and faith in a higher power, right? That things are going to be okay, that we're going to make it work, that things are going to come together, or that we have help from the divine realms in order to make it happen too, which I think we're also having an easier time of tapping into as well. Not only that, but Pisces, I need to note, is not an active sign. It's ruled by Neptune. And Saturn isn't a fast planet either. So this isn't speeding up again. There's no like speeding up, pushing. No, this is us having more patience, right? Pisces is about patience. Being the last sign of the zodiac, it also too is about taking things more easy as well. That's going on. So there's more of that that's happening. In addition, Saturn can bring commitment. It's a planet traditionally known for commitment, so it can bring more commitment to that, more commitment to things, to trust, to hope, to faith, to trusting it'll all come together, to allowing it to happen in its own time, and being patient and letting the divine help you out. Not only that, but I also need to note as well that another way to think of Saturn is that Saturn can also indicate decisions being made here about our situation, like say how to handle relationships and money and any issues that may come up with the with the Pisces, the Saturn and Pisces connecting to Scorpio, as we discussed, being about relationships and money. So it can also bring decisions there about that that's going on. And the decisions, I want to say, being a little more easy to make. I want to say, because remember, I like this. This is a trine and a sextile here. Decisions being easier to make, or if not easier to make, a strong inner knowing, like a strong inner knowing of like what decision needs to be made, and inner sense of like, I'm going to do it. You know, if it's not an easy decision, then maybe a hard decision that you know needs to be made deep down, and that you have more faith and more hope in order to make happen here in the way that you need, that I think can be really helpful. So what that means to me now, to bring that together before I add more aspects on here, is that at this full moon in Scorpio here, we're trying to better understand any subconscious emotions or fears that may be in the way of us sustaining a new beginning, a big new beginning of life that we're trying to enter in a different way of moving forward in it here. And that's hard for us to do at first at this full moon, to really get an understanding of our subconscious fears and what's going on, because either there's something sudden, unexpected that's challenging that may happen with relationships and money that may startle us and throw us for a tailspin and be very uncomfortable and trigger us, or nothing unexpected will happen, but we may just feel like something bad and unexpected is going to happen because things are just maybe going a little bit more slowly here in the process than we may like. Okay, that may also create a lot of really intense and uncomfortable, strong negative emotions and anxiety around our situation. But from this intense anxiety that we have caused by unexpected events or just by our own mind, I do believe that something unexpectedly shifts within us. Something suddenly is able to shift within us because of this intense emotion and actually turn it on its head. And instead of let it drive us more crazy, we're suddenly and unexpectedly able to get these events that may occur under control and our own emotions under control here, and to get insights that are going to help us to handle this situation better and to stand more in our power. And the insights that I think we get to help us understand this situation better is not that we need to push more or do more faster. It's that we need to be more okay with the pace, however long it's going to take, and to be more confident in ourselves or in the process. And this interchange and calmness and confidence in a slower pace and in the process, and just however long it's going to take, then helps our situation to get more under control or to be easier to manage, and helps us to be more patient and in tune with spirit, and helps us to make better decisions about what we need to do for our situation more easily, or if the decisions aren't easy, to help us feel divinely inspired to make certain decisions and to deal with whatever hardship may occur as a result of them in a better way here, where we feel more hopeful or more trusting of the process and of the divine to help us through. Okay, that then leads me now to the next alignment that I want to mention here, which is going to be Mars in the sign of Leo. Making a trine over here to Venus in the sign of Aries. Okay, now this I also want to consider to be a good alignment that I like a lot. This to me is a good one because Mars and Venus are the lovers. You've got traditionally the masculine principle Mars with the feminine principle Venus, and I think it's fair to say that they like each other and that they get along. I also do consider a trine to be positive, not all the time, but way more often than not, especially if we got the lovers involved here with one another. I also like it too because Mars, I believe, is out of post-retrograde shadow in Leo now, meaning it's moving up to its natural speed, and Venus is still in post-retrograde shadow, but it's about to leave it very soon. So I think there's something here good that is going on here. What might that be? Well, Mars is about action, right? It's the planet of action. It's the planet of doing things here. I do think it's connected to some new beginning of life that we've been trying to get to, or starting again, especially at that solar eclipse in Aries. If you watched that video about 2 months ago, here that's going on. And especially I need to note with Venus in the sign of Aries, right? Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It's about trying new things. It's about fresh starts. You know, I think to change our life all around here that's going on. So this is more action to do that. Mars is also motivation and drive. Leo can bring more courage and motivation to do that. Not only is this more action, motivation, drive, courage to change our life totally different, start anew, totally new situations in our life here for the better. But Leo is also a lot about our heart, our joy, about ourselves, right? Being ruled by the sun, about our ego, which is not always bad. So it's also about us trying to move forward with more courage and motivation into a new experience of life, but also in a way that's going to resonate with us as individuals, not other people, not what we should do or could have done or would have done, but who we actually are right now and what is best for ourselves as well. And it's connecting with Venus here. And Venus is not about pushing and forcing. Venus is about allowing things to happen in a more natural and easy way with more of its own pace, which is really what we've been talking about, especially since that new moon in Taurus 2 weeks ago before this. It's about us doing that. Now, I do understand that Venus is in a sign of Aries. Maybe let me say a note on that, which is a sign it doesn't really like to be in. And it's a sign, the reason why Venus doesn't like to be in Aries is because Venus is calm and Aries is pushy sometimes. But I like Venus in Aries now. And I like Venus in Aries now because Venus went retrograde in Aries, right? It's still coming out of the post-retrograde, but it just went retrograde there. And that to me means Venus got a whole different way of doing Aries. And Venus got a whole different way of doing Aries, or Aries got a whole different way of doing Venus, whatever you want to put it. Mars and Venus got a whole different outlook on one another and how they're behaving, where Venus is no longer pushing and Aries is no longer pushing Venus, and where we're no longer doing things in a pushy way. It's more of that calm and ease here that's starting to set in. And the trine can indicate that happening more naturally, more natural action, more easy action, or things just feeling like there's a little chemistry or a little rhythm. We also talked about that at the new moon in Taurus 2 weeks ago, a little bit more of a rhythm, natural rhythm to what we're trying to change in our life and how we're trying to move things together here that's going on. That could also, again, involve relationships and money with Venus here that's happening. Okay. That's going on. Okay. Right? A little bit more of a natural rhythm to do things differently with relationships and money in the way you've done them before. So what that means now, to kind of back out and bring it all together before I add a few more things here on this horoscope, what's going on at this full moon in Scorpio is that we are trying to, I think, better understand any of our subconscious emotions, desires, fears that we may feel, especially around some new, different, and better chapter of life. We're getting more of a boost to step into in a new way that's more in alignment with our heart, so that we can better understand those things and then adjust them here. That's going on and transform them. And early on at this full moon in Scorpio, that's actually very, very, very difficult for us to do, to understand our subconscious emotions and transform and get a handle on them. And that's because either sudden and unexpected negative events are happening outside of us with relationships and money that are making us anxious and nervous and all over the place here. Or if nothing negative and unexpected is happening, we just have a lingering fear that something unexpected and negative is going to happen at any moment. That's also making it hard for us to be introspective and to figure out what's going on here within us in this situation, and can feel very intensely difficult. But from these very deep and intense negative emotions that we're feeling, we suddenly and unexpectedly, just as fast as any negative event happened, start to get a handle on them, start to understand them more, and suddenly start to figure out solutions about how to better work with any of these negative fears around our situation here in a much, much better way. That's going on, so that we can stand strong and more in our power instead of fall apart. And I think the insights and the solutions that we get here at this full moon in Scorpio is not that we need to push and force more. No, the solution and insight that we get is that we need to be more confident in the process and in things playing out either more slowly or in their own way and in their own time. And that actually helps us to feel better about our situation, feel more at peace, feel more calm, feel more trusting of the universe, the divine, and our intuition here, and to get insights and to make important decisions, about our situation either more easily, or if the decisions aren't easy, to feel more at peace about our situation, the decisions that we're making here, in order to make said changes with relationships and money, and then actually do it. Not just get the decision to make a change with relationships and money, but to actually do it, to actually follow through on changing our relationships and our money in this more calm, easier, slower, way, with a more balanced pace, and with more trust in the process and how things will play out, and to see things shift. I think things are shifting here. Okay, that then leads me now to the next alignment that I want to mention, which is not going to be related to the full moon itself. I think we've covered the ones there that I want to talk about, but is going to be happening around the full moon in Scorpio. And that's going to be Mercury over here in the sign of Taurus, making a square to Pluto and Aquarius at the time of this full moon. Okay, now this to me is a challenging alignment, a very challenging one. Here, and that's because it is a square. A square is a hard aspect, really, no matter which planets are involved, and also too because Pluto is involved, and Pluto is an outer planet, which is further than far away from where we live here on Earth, which is harder for us to understand, right? So much so that we don't even know if it's really a planet or not, what it is. Here. That's going on. So this can be a little bit of a challenge and a little bit difficult here, especially with the full moon, right, being in Scorpio, which is Pluto's sign. Okay, so this can be a bit difficult. What is the difficulty here that's going on? Well, Mercury has to do with our thoughts here, and it has to do with our mind. I think that's how we typically think of it. A lot of times that's going on. Not only does it have to do with our thought and our mind, but I'm also going to pull more of the Virgo, because we do have the South Node in Virgo, right? And Mercury correlates naturally to Virgo. And Virgo is not just about thinking and talking. It's also about planning and strategizing, right? Detailed steps. That's a Virgo thing. We got to get detailed steps on how we're going to do things, and is more about hard work and hard effort here. That's happening in our situation. And Pluto, sometimes, especially challenging, which it is here, by square, can bring too much of something, because it's a lot about our desire. And sometimes we desire something so much that can pull us too much in a direction here that's going on. So this can bring too much of that, of thoughts, of ideas, of planning, strategy, detail, especially with Pluto and Aquarius too, an air sign, right? Which is also kind of cerebral, kind of in the head here as well, that's going on. So this can bring, sure, over planning, over details about our situation, or just overwhelmed by how many steps it might take us to get to where we want to go, to finish making these changes that we're deciding on and that we just started doing, right? With the last alignments here as well. It can make us feel overwhelmed, a little frustrated here about it. Maybe there's still some more fear and insecurity that can creep up here as well around it, especially how long it's going to take with Mercury being in Taurus, a little bit of a slower sign here as well. That's going on, and can create a whole bunch of jumble in the head. What do I do first? If I'm going to do things slowly now, what do I do first? What do I do second? What do I do third? In what way? I mean, should this be second? Maybe this should be first. Maybe I should do this. I don't know. Now there's so many steps. Now it's going to take forever, so it could be a lot of that's going on. Not only that, but Mercury, if we want to talk about Virgo Mercury, and that's what I'm mostly referring to here. Virgo Mercury can also have to do with hard work and perfectionism and overworking and fixing things here as well. And that's the opposite really of what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do at this time in our lives is act in a way that's fun, that's happy with the Leo, with the Aries, and in alignment with our heart, not slaving away, working hard, all these little details. So not only can this alignment create so much of a plan, or an intense need to now plan all our steps now that we're going slower, and the plan being confusing and frustrating and feeling overwhelming because there's just so many steps, it can also throw us back into hard work and proving ourselves here. It's not forcing, but it's more like working hard and taking care of every single little detail and being perfectionistic. That takes us out of that joy space, out of that happy joy space that we're trying to find here that's going on. And that can be very frustrating, very angering, okay, and confusing, right? It can bring anger with the Pluto, very angering and very frustrating of like so many steps. I don't know which one to do first. Now everything's got to be perfect and I got to do all this work and, overwhelmed with work here. Not only that, but another thing that I want to say here too is that Mercury is also about communication, right? Which Virgo can be about as well, right? Because again, Mercury correlates to Virgo, so they're related. They're going to impact each other. Okay. And so this can also bring some issues around communication here as well. If not in the mind, overwhelmed by planning and details and then falling back into hard work, which is the opposite of passion and excitement, but it can also bring two issues around communication here that's going on. What kind of issues here? Well, I one of the things that I believe, Pluto, another way to interpret it can be kind of secretive, right? Or private. It can be a little bit more of a private sign here as well, being a water sign here too. And so this can also be a sense of like, I've got a lot of things to say, but I haven't been saying them, right? We've been keeping them private here for a long time. That's been going on, and haven't been expressing them publicly, possibly with the Pluto and Aquarius, right? The Aquarius is a public sign. Haven't been discussing them publicly here. That's been going on here. That's happening. That could also feel a little bit challenging too, okay, about our situation. Hey, if it's not, I've got a lot of things to say, but I haven't been expressing them publicly, and now they're building up. Now they're just building up. It can also be a sense too of I've been trying to speak, right? Mercury, I've been trying to speak. I've been trying to communicate with other people about things that need to get done, right? Because communication is an important thing. It's hard to change anything in your life, especially relationships and money, without communicating what you're feeling or what's going on or what you need from them, right? Communication is key to making these changes that we need to make, right? So not only could this be just feeling like we haven't really been communicating about what we've been realizing over the course of the past few months, because I think we've had some very deep realizations over the course of the past few months, especially as planets made the conjunction with the North Node in Pisces. But this can also indicate another thing too, where we feel like we've been trying to communicate the past few months or weeks or whatever, and like it hasn't been fully understood either. There can also be this sense of it hasn't fully been understood. I've been trying to tell you, but you haven't heard. You haven't listened here as well. That can go on. Not only can it create that, but Mercury too, again, maybe if I want to go back to the mind, can create confusion. Maybe there's also been some confusion about what to say to someone that'll make them understand, or to convey what's going on inside, or confused about what you're feeling. There's some kind of issue now around the communication here that's happening, and that's been building up, I think gradually as well over the course of the past few weeks, I might say, here too, that's going on. Not only that here, but again, Pluto can kind of, because there's so intense desire, can also push things too. So not only can this create just a lot of pent up communication, things that haven't been said or that have been said but haven't really been honored, or things like that, it can create a lot of anger now. Pluto can bring anger and frustration that the voice hasn't been heard, or the voice hasn't been used, or that you feel silenced, or like you haven't been able to say the thing that you wanted to say, and can bring angry words, arguments, angry conversations. I told you this, you didn't listen to me. I've been wanting to say this to you forever. I couldn't say it because you went. It can bring angry words where all of a sudden the lid comes off, and anger and all these words, which usually are not that pleasant with the Pluto here, come out in relationships, maybe with the money. That could be very frustrating and also very upsetting here as well in the situation. And then I also think are going to pull more Virgo with the South Node. They're very critical of other people, critical of them and what they've been doing, maybe critical of yourself, your finances here. That can be hard and create some challenges yet again. Okay, so what this means to me, to bring it together before I give you one more alignment, that'll be the last one, I'm going to give you some advice here with that one, is that what's going on at this full moon in Scorpio here is that we are trying to better understand some subconscious emotions, some subconscious fears, maybe triggers around something new that we're trying to do to move into a different and better experience of life, especially in a more slow, calm, and balanced way here that's going on. And that's so that we can better manage those. And at first, that's a little bit hard for us to do, to understand our emotions and to manage them, because either sudden, unexpected negative events are happening in our situation with relationships and with money that are making us anxious and nervous and just spiral out of control. Or if unexpected and negative events aren't actually occurring, then we're in fear that unexpected and negative events may occur anyways, because things feel like they're taking so long to occur, and then spiral out regardless. Also making it hard for us to focus and all of that. But from these intense emotions and negative emotions that we're feeling that are spiraling out of control, we then all of a sudden are going to start to understand them, right? Because they're coming on so strongly. We then all of a sudden are going to be able to focus on them and understand them and get insights about how to handle them that help us to actually not feel this fear as much and transform it for the better and to feel stronger and more confident. And the insight that we're going to get that's going to help us better understand these negative emotions and handle them is that we need to be more confident that the slower approach, a more calm and balanced approach, is the best approach, and to double down more on that and to stop pushing and to stop forcing. And us doubling down more on a calm and balanced approach is then going to help us to feel more in control of our situation and to feel more patient and more at ease, and going to help us to get more in touch with our intuition and to make better and easier decisions now about what to do next with our situation, especially with relationships and money, and how to handle them, right? And either make the decisions easier or make us just feel better about whatever needs to occur here. And once we start to feel more calm about this slower approach and get insights about what decisions we need to make to change our relationships and money, we then start to take the action to actually change the relationships and money in this slower, easier, more calm, more patient way here that we need. But the more that we are adjusting relationships and money in this slow, calm, easier, and patient way, we then start to get too much in our head about the steps to do the thing here. Because if we're going to go slow, we start to become more thoughtful. So we then start to get in our head about if we're going to go slow, what needs to be done first with relationships, what needs to be done second, what needs to be done third, and what needs to be prioritized here. And we start to get too detailed around our plan and around what needs to happen and around what the steps need to do, that then start to throw us back into hard work and things taking so long to do things that can be very frustrating and very upsetting. Okay. Not only that, do we start to get in our head about the exact steps and the exact plan that we're going to do things that's overwhelming and throw us back into hard work, but we then also start to feel very frustrated here that maybe there's been something on our mind that either we haven't said previously because maybe we didn't know what we were thinking or what to say, or that's just been ignored. We start to get really upset about that and really critical of ourselves and others for maybe not doing it or not listening to it, and then blurt out thoughts, emotions that we've kept bottled up inside in very critical, harsh ways that can create a lot of arguments here, or disagreements, or difficulty here for us to handle and for us to work with. That could feel a little challenging. Okay, that then leads me now to the next and the last alignment that I want to mention here in this video, which is going to be, again, not with the full moon, but happening around it. And that's going to be Jupiter here in the sign of Gemini, making a square to the nodal axis, which includes the south node here in Virgo and the north node here in Pisces. Okay. If you can kind of see it. I know the chart's kind of busy now, but it's Jupiter and Gemini making a square to the nodal axis. Okay. What is this? Okay. This, to me, I want to note, is not going to give me so much new information about what's happening, but this to me is more the underlying reason of why some of this stuff is going on. And it's also the advice is what I'm going to give it to you as. Okay. Why is this maybe the reason and the advice? Well, this is a skip step when you have a planet square the nodal axis in evolutionary astrology, which is what I do. And, when you have a skip step, what that indicates is that the planet that's squaring the nodal axis, right, is halfway in between. It's halfway in between the south node and the north node, in this case, Jupiter, and it tends to get ignored. The planet squaring the nodal axis, we tend to skip it. That's why it's called a skip step, ignore it and not do it. And that's because this planet is halfway in between the south node and the north node, and it gets confused. Which one do I do? Do I do the south node? Do I do the north node, south node, north node? I don't know. I don't know what to do. And Therefore, we don't really do it as much as we really need to here, which can hold us back from really moving forward in the consistent way that it is that we need. Okay, so this to me is going to indicate kind of what is missing from our situation and why it's missing and what we can do in order to fix it to really get us moving again here. And what is that? That's going to be Jupiter in Gemini. Now, but one more thought before I explain Jupiter and Gemini, right? Gemini, well, let me say it this way. Gemini is about our thoughts. It's about our communication. It's about our mind in a lot of ways, being an air sign. It's not about, this is what I want to say first, our personal power. That's what Scorpio is about. It's also not about us feeling stronger in a slower approach, right? That's what Scorpio and Taurus is about. We've done that. Okay. So the reason why now all of a sudden we're having issues with our plan and with our strategy and the details and with the voice now is not because we haven't found our power in a stronger approach, and is not because we're not confident in a slower approach. We are more confident in things going slower. Now it is a different issue here that's coming up, which needs a different solution. Okay. What's the issue here? Well, again, Gemini is a lot about thinking. It's a lot about communication and all of that. With Gemini at this skip step, again, there's something that's not being said, right? We're not doing fully. That's the thing with this. We're skipping it. There's something that needs to be said that either we haven't said, don't want to say, or still avoiding here that needs to go on. Okay. There's something we're not saying, and Jupiter's a very big planet. There might be a lot we're not saying. There might be a lot we're not saying here that needs to be said, that is holding us back. So I think that's how I came up with the other interpretation, in case you were curious. That's going on. Not only that, but Gemini is also about communication. Yeah, right. And Jupiter's a lot of it. There's a lot of that needs to be said. In addition to that, sorry, I think this is where I'm trying to go. Gemini is a lot about our thoughts. It's a lot about our mindset. And Jupiter can also make our thoughts confusing, because Jupiter doesn't like to be in Gemini. So I think there's also been another thought, a lot of confusion about what to say and what we actually think and believe about our situation here as well. That's been going on too. And maybe we've been a little too rigid. Sometimes Jupiter can bring that, especially in a sign it doesn't like to be in. We've been a little too rigid or making assumptions about things that aren't true, because Gemini to me is very open-minded, like anything goes in Gemini. And so I think there can be a lot of that, making assumptions that aren't true, or having too strict belief systems, which again can be a little picky with the Virgo there. That's going on. That's also been hard. So I think some of the underlying reasons, right, of why the communication is now an issue and the planning is an issue here with our situation is not because we're not standing more in our power, especially around a slower approach and things taking the time that they need to take in order for us to move forward. I think we're having issues now with the thoughts and the communication, because again, there's a lot that we haven't been saying for a long time, or that we haven't known how to say, or that we've been too opinionated about with false beliefs and false ideas about how things should be and how things should work. Here, that's going on with ourselves or with other people, or just confused about what to really think and what to believe. Okay, this to me is bringing more of the why. Okay, and just believing wrong things, perhaps, or just not helpful things. Not only that, but this to me is also going to give advice, right? And the way that this gives advice is according to Evolutionary Astrology by Jeffrey Wolf Green, which is what I do, is in order to get unstuck and to unskip the skip step here is to for one, really do more of through conscious choice. The thing that we're not doing enough of is to consciously choose to do that, which sometimes the node that the planet last touched can be helpful with, which in this case was the North Node in Pisces. But we need to do more. We need to do more here of the Jupiter in Gemini. And what is that? Maybe now to think of it in a more positive way. Well, Gemini is a mutable sign. It's very flexible here. And again, I see Gemini as like an anything goes kind of thing. Okay. Right. And I got a ton of planets Gemini. And so I think that part of the advice of what's missing here is not us no longer standing in our power. We are now standing in our power. What's missing is flexibility. What we're missing here is that there's a need to go with the flow or be a little more flexible, right? And even the Pisces, if the Pisces is the resolution node, the North Node, to go more with the flow and be more flexible. So, okay, if we have like 10-step plan to get to where we want to go and we miss one step, that's okay. Be flexible, make another step. Okay, if we have this 10-step plan of where we want to go and we think it's going to take this long and certain steps take shorter than others and certain steps take longer, it's okay. Be flexible. Don't be hard on yourself. Don't worry about it. Just adjust it and do something different. And that's more interesting. You know what I mean? Or if you have a plan about how your life is going to go, and then all of a sudden at this full moon in Scorpio, a relationship tells you maybe it's not going to happen with me in the way you thought it was going to happen. Okay, be flexible. It's all right. Shake it off. You know what I mean? Like, it's fine with the Gemini here, and move through it more flexibly here than getting stuck and fixating on something here, which may have a tendency to happen with some of the Scorpio as well. And not only that, but Gemini is also about communication here, but you have to understand communication is not a one and done kind of thing. It's not like I communicate and I say everything I need to say today and then tomorrow we'll never speak again. It's like, no, when you communicate about something that's important to you, you say a little bit now, a little bit tomorrow, a little bit the next day here. That's the thing. And that's the whole point. That's what Gemini loves to do. Gemini doesn't want just one conversation about one thing. It wants like 500 conversations about all the things here that's happening. So I think another piece of advice is not only here that we need to be more flexible because we're being too rigid in mindset, too rigid in our approach and where we thought our life was going to be here, but we also need to communicate more often, right? And when you communicate more often, that's when the emotional charge is out of it, right? If you only speak once, there's so much emotional pressure to get it right this time and to get all the answers. But if you're speaking multiple times, there's less emotional pressure on it. It's like, all right, I'll just talk to you tomorrow and we'll figure that next part out, you know? So there's also a need for more communication, more consistently. And maybe I'll also say too, you know, air signs are more air, more light, playful. I even consider Gemini that with Gemini about the twins, right? We need to be more playful. Here, have fun with it a little bit. Okay, you say something wrong. Haha, funny. Okay, you miss a step. Haha. Like, it's okay. You know, like it's fine, you know, to have more fun with the process because that's what we're trying to do here. That's what we're trying to do. If you've been watching my horoscopes, especially since that solar eclipse in Aries 2 months ago, what we're trying to do is create a different experience in life. That's fun for a change. Not what we have to do, should do. That's fun. So why would you not have fun creating it here throughout the process that's going on, and to be a little more flexible here in order to make things happen? That's what we need to do more of. That's a conscious choice that I need to note is going to become more and more and more and more and more important as time goes by, especially with a new moon in Gemini coming up 2 weeks from now, and Jupiter going to move towards the last degree of Gemini soon, which is an anaretic degree that's going on, and Uranus going to enter Gemini soon. It's going to get increasingly important, flexible, constant communication, playful, loose. Okay, that's going on. And maybe another thought, less emotional, less offended by things. You know, it's like, it's okay. That's going to go on. That's what we need here. That's going to help you continue to make these changes that you're trying to make, continue to adjust your relationships and money in the way that you need to make it without the fear, without the anxiety, and a more consistent approach that's going to work. Okay, and that's it. Because that's it. I'm just going to repeat that one last time without the jargon. So let me do that now. What I think is going on here at this full moon in Scorpio is that we're trying to get more understanding and insight about any subconscious fear or triggers or difficulty that we might have moving forward in a new, different, and better experience of life in a way that's easier and slower and more fun. Here, that's going on. And at first, that's a little hard for us to do because there's either sudden and unexpected negative events with relationships and money actually happening that's throwing us for a loop and creating even more anxiety that's making it hard for us to focus and understand. Or if there's not a sudden and unexpected negative event, then there's a constant fear. There's a constant fear that some negative event is going to happen unexpectedly with relationship and money that's also spiraling us really crazy into more fear and more anxiety. Okay, but from this intense fear and this intense anxiety that we have, we then also suddenly and unexpectedly start to figure it out because there's so much of it. We then suddenly and unexpectedly start to laser in on the fear and understand better why we're afraid, and not only understand better why we're afraid of doing things in a different way that's slower, easier, more fun here, but also to get better insights on how to handle that fear and that anxiety here. And that insight that we get on how to better handle that fear and that anxiety around this different approach, slower, easier, and fun here that's going on, is that we need to stop pushing and forcing, and we need to be even more slow and to be more confident in what we're already doing, confident what we already started, and that it will work, and just stronger in that approach. And us being more confident and more strong in this slower approach and believe more in it then helps us to tune in more to our intuition and to figure out more naturally and instinctually and intuitively what needs to be done. What decisions need to be done to better get a handle on relationships and money if anything unexpected happened with it, or to better work out our relationships and money in a more positive way that's going to bring things together. Not only do we get insights about how to do it, but then we start to take the action to fix the things with relationships and with money in this better way that we need. And it actually is going very well. But the more that we are adjusting these things with relationships and money for the better, based on our intuition here, we then all of a sudden get our mind in a tizzy. We then all of a sudden get too focused on the steps of what needs to happen first, what needs to happen second, what needs to happen third here, and how it needs to happen and in what way, especially if we're going to kind of take it slow and all of that we then get overwhelmed mentally around what to do and when to do it and how to do it. That just makes us confused. Not only do we get too overwhelmed in the steps, but because we're taking things slowly and there's so many steps, we then fall back into hard work, proving ourselves, perfectionism, instead of just letting things be. And instead of just letting things happen in their own way and time, and making them simpler and easier, and enjoying the process here that's going on, which is then very, very frustrating to us. Not only is that very, very frustrating to us that we're now overwhelmed by all the plans and steps and thrown back into hard work and all of that, but we then also start to feel like our voice has been neglected. Like there's something we either need to say that we haven't been saying, or haven't known what to say, or hasn't been heard, that would be very crucial to helping us adjust our situation and to helping us turn our situation around. And we then get frustrated that it's not being said or heard, and that we've got all this stuff going on in our mind that's going on, and get impatient and then start to blurt out things that we're feeling, which can be very upsetting to ourselves and others and create arguments and disagreements and all of that here. And the reason, why I think that we are having issues too in the head with our plan now, too detailed, falling back into hard work, and the communication blurting out, is because, we haven't been saying what needs to be said here, or haven't feel like it's been heard. Because we just have been confused, We don't know what we're thinking and to believe, and have been too rigid. And the way to adjust this situation here that we're in is, and to make it better here, especially any arguments, is not to back out. It's not to force things even more. The way to adjust and handle that in our situation is to be even more flexible than we were before with our plan, to have even more fun and be more playful with our plan, and to communicate more about what's important to us and what we're doing on a more consistent basis, instead of just once and let it all go. We need to communicate on a more consistent, regular basis without the emotional charge behind it here, because that is then going to help us actually do what we need to do to change relationships and money in a more consistent, easy way, more paced, more natural here, and have more fun with it here, and work with people and relationships much better in the process to make that happen. Okay, and that's it. Because that's it, I'm now just going to erase the chart here, and then I'm going to say a few other things here about this energy, but I'm going to say a few things about this energy in a more conversational way without the aspects, because sometimes the aspects make it hard. I got to be honest, because I'm tied to those and whatever those are trying to say specifically. So I'm just going to say a few other things here that's going on, okay, and in a different way. Okay, and maybe I'll start back at that new moon in Taurus 2 weeks ago. What was that about? Because I think these are very closely related, obviously, the two. But 2 weeks ago at that new moon in Taurus, what was the issue that was going on there? Well, we were moving into a new, different, and better experience of life for the 500th time since 2020 here, in a different way that I think is actually going to work this time. And we were trying to do it slowly, We're trying to do it slowly to sustain it, to sustain the new beginning so that it can actually work here this time. And there was a lot of fear around doing it slowly, If you watched that horoscope 2 weeks ago, there was a lot of fear that if I take my time to get into this new beginning experience of life, maybe it's never going to happen because it hasn't happened before, or maybe it won't happen here. That was going on, and there was a lot of pushing around that, okay? Well, this full moon in Scorpio is really about us better trying to understand that fear that was happening 2 weeks ago at that new moon in Taurus around us doing things slower as we move forward, and to better get a handle on it. Okay. And I will say that I do believe that it happens at this full moon in Scorpio. I feel pretty confident about that at some point at this full moon in Scorpio, that's going to happen. We are going to get a better understanding of why we're afraid of like moving a little slower when it comes to moving forward into this different and better experience of life, and of what's causing it. And not only do I think we're going to get better understanding about it, but I think we're also going to get a better way of handling it and feel more able to handle it and more confident in that slower approach. So I think that those are some main things that I want to start off by saying first. Here, there is that understanding the fear to going more slowly. Okay. Figure out how to be calm with it and to manage it and to be strong with it. And then to accept it more, right? To accept it more. That's really what it is. Right? It's these kind of three things that are going on. Full moon in Scorpio. I'm understanding why I'm afraid of going slow as I move into a different experience of life. I'm feeling more calm around this slower approach, and I'm accepting more that this is what needs to happen and this is how it needs to happen here. Okay. I believe that this is what's happening. I believe it's also happening suddenly and unexpectedly here. That's very, very good. Okay. That I like. Okay. What else do I want to note? Okay, but even though I feel like we're getting this full moon is weird when there's like two parts to it, or there's like two separate things that are kind of going on simultaneously. So I feel like this is one part, this is the one part, this is what's happening, and then there's something else that's also going on that I want to discuss too. But do I want to do that? I might want to linger. Let me linger here, if you will, for a minute on this part. Okay, understanding calm and acceptance of a slower pace that it might take for us to move forward. Hey, and the other thing I want to note and want to linger on here for a minute is about the slower pace of things. Okay. The speed is such a weird thing to talk about. I think speed has been a weird thing for me to talk about for years. If you've been watching it, it's a very weird thing to talk about because I'm actually of the impression that things are actually going pretty fast. It's just my personal opinion based on the astrology, not based on my personal life, but based on the astrology here. I'm of the personal opinion that things are going fast because we did have a new moon solar eclipse in Aries, which is a fast sign. Mars is now out of post retrograde shadow and up to speed here. And that's what we talked about all last year in my horoscopes, going fast, easier, simpler. I actually think we're going fast here. That's going on. But what's changed, especially over the course of the past few weeks, the new moon in Taurus and a whole bunch of planets conjunct the North Node in Pisces here, is that we're stopping the rat race. We're stopping the rat race, which has been a frenetic kind of energy, right? We're stopping the rat race because the rat race defines the old life that we're trying to get away from. Okay. And we're stopping the frenetic energy and we're trying to be more calm. And when you're used to being frenetic, everything is an emergency. Everything's an emergency. Everything's a nightmare. And then all of a sudden you start to say, maybe it's not, maybe everything's okay. And you start to be calm, even though you're going the same speed, it feels a lot slower, So I think there's another thought here too, is that I keep mentioning slowness in maybe the past horoscope, this horoscope here. We're not actually going slow. It just feels like we're going slow, right? Because we're doing things differently than we used to do them. And the way we used to do them was very frenetic. Okay. And now we're trying to do it more calm. Not only that, but another thought about the way we used to do things too. The way we used to do things too is doing too much, throwing a lot of stuff at the wall. So we conflated busy with fast. Right? That was the old way. The old way of being is like, I'm doing a lot, so I must be doing it all very fast, and I must be doing more and making a lot of progress. And that's not actually the truth. I think that in the past, we were doing a lot of stuff, which felt like we were moving fast, but it actually wasn't the right stuff. It actually wasn't the right stuff that we needed to be doing. It was stuff that we ended up needing to redo later or didn't really work here as well. That's going on. And I think that naturally feels faster, right? When you're used to doing things frenetic, crazy, anxiety, 500 things at once, even though half the things aren't really going to work. And then all of a sudden you come now to calm action. And I think we're trying to be more discerning about our action, right? Trying to do less, trying to make things simpler, which I've also been talking about here too. Then it feels like you're not doing as much. It feels like things are slower. It feels like it's not as productive. So I also want to note that I think we're going fast. The slowness is not because we're actually going slow. The slowness is because we think it's going slow. We think it's going slow when really it's not. Okay. And we think it's going slow when really it's not, because we've been too busy running around like a chicken with our head cut off the past 35 years. I believe it's been a long time doing a whole bunch of stuff that we think is good and productive and busy that we just eventually have to redo that doesn't really actually work. And now, as of a few weeks ago, we're finally not doing all the extra busy stuff that's not really going to work anyways and trying not to worry about it. And now we feel like we're being unproductive. And now we feel like things are going slow when they're not. They're actually being faster and they're actually being more productive. Why might that be? Well, when you stop doing things you don't need to be doing that aren't going to work for your situation, and you start to just focus on the few things that actually will work, you're going to be more fast. You're going to be more productive. You're going to be more successful in the long run. Like, do you see? If you're doing 5 things that aren't going to get you to where you need to go, but there's a lot of stuff you got to do with them, versus 1 thing that's going to get you exactly where you need to go, right? The 1 thing is going to feel like a lot less compared to the 5, and a lot slower compared to the 5 because you're not busy, you're not doing as much stuff. But the 1 thing is going to be a lot more effective to get you to where you need to go. And it's actually going to be faster because you're not going to have to redo it all. So I think there's a big thought here that I'm trying to say is that we're not actually going slow. I think we're going pretty fast in our situation. We just think we're going slow because that's the way we've been conditioned to be. So that is the way we feel like it's happening here, that's going on, and we're trying to get out of that and break that thought and break that habit here. And this full moon, to now bring that together, is us doing that. This full moon in Scorpio is about us saying, whoa, 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 whoa. I think I'm going a lot slower than I really am. I'm actually going faster, and even if I am going slow, what's the issue? What's the issue here? It's us really it's us really figuring that out and saying, what's the issue with going slow, and getting deeper with that. Not only that, I think another realization that I didn't mention earlier that I think is coming to us as well about this too is like, what do we have to lose if things do go more slowly, right? What is there to lose? We've tried everything the past 5 years. If you've been watching my horoscope, we've tried everything to get to a new, different, and better experience of life. It hasn't worked. So I think we're also starting to come to that realization of like, well, we tried everything for the past 5 years. It didn't work. I've been okay. I've been just barely making it. I've just been barely making it. So, it was another few more months. It's another few more years, I think there's also that realization. I think there's also a realization too of like, I've tried everything else. This is the only thing I haven't tried. The only thing I haven't tried is to do less instead of doing more and running around with like a chicken with my head cut off, So I think there's also another realization coming at this full moon in Scorpio of like, hey, I'm actually not going that slow. I'm going at a fine pace. And if not that, then what's the harm? Nothing else I've been doing working. I've been okay. Maybe I'll be okay a few more years or however long it takes. And I've tried everything else. So this slow approach must be the one. Must be one I got to try to see. I think there's more of that, and there's more of an understanding and more of a calm around this. So instead of us freaking out about it, oh my gosh, more calm and more of an acceptance of like, yes, this is it. And this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to take it easy here, and more of a determination. Scorpio, maybe I should even add that. Not only an acceptance, more of a determination to do the slower, right? Do the thing that feels slow, even though it's not really. There's more of a determination here as well in order to make that happen. So I think that's the first thing, group of things that I want to explain here about this full moon in Scorpio is that we're getting more of an understanding of what we're afraid of when it comes to going slower, and more calm around this slower approach, more accepting of it, and more determined to stay in it, to stay slower. Even though slow is an optical illusion, even though we're not actually going slow, we just feel like we're going slow because it's not the way we've been doing things here that's going on, and because we've tried everything else and nothing else has worked, and maybe this will be it, and we have no choice but to go for the ride, no matter how long it takes, right? It's us coming around to that and being more accepting of that here that's going on. Here. Now, how is this arising? Maybe I should give another thought. Now, how is this acceptance arising here? It's arising, I think, from feeling more anxiety. It's not arising from like a calm day in the park and we're having a great day and all of a sudden we're like, oh, I'm okay with going slow. This is a nice day. It's so calm. It's beautiful out here. No, this acceptance of, okay, the slow approach is the best approach, I think, is coming from a lot of anxiety, from a lot of anxiety that we're feeling, and maybe even from just negative circumstances that we're feeling in our life, especially when it comes to relationships and money here as well. That's going on. It's this anxiety and negative stuff that's forcing us to realize that, not out of ease, but out of kind of some inner turmoil. Why is that here? Well, the intense negative emotions are bringing us deeper into what we're feeling, right? Which is the nature of the moon in Scorpio, to actually make us feel them and work through them. Because sometimes there's a tendency to like bypass negative emotions, right? Sometimes when you're feeling something that's negative, if there's not the intense focus on it, then you can just pretend it's not there. Oh, I don't feel that. I'm not that fat. I'm not that afraid. No, I'm not afraid. I'm not that scared. But if you have a negative situation kind of pushing you onwards, then you have this fear around going so that you can't escape. It's like a pressure keg and you're forced to look inwards. And so I think that this realization is not coming from a beautiful day, walk in the park. It's coming from an intense negative situation with relationships and money, because if we did not have this negative and intense situation, we may overlook our fears or not want to deal with them. It's too hard to deal with them here around going slow and what that means. And this intense negative event is going to force us inwards and to realize maybe that your worst fears are not as bad as you think, or that you're going to be just fine, or that you can handle yourself anyways, right? They're going to force you inwards to feel with those feelings and to realize going slower, which really isn't slow, right? It's like a misnomer here. Going slower is not the worst thing in the world, because you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. You're going to be able to handle yourself. Okay. And what this might mean for some of you, right, is that maybe because I read the comments here, and maybe there's some of you been like, I don't know, money's getting tight and I can't find a job, and what am I going to do? And how am I going to make it work? And I can't do nothing. Well, this full moon could bring up your worst fear. Your worst fear is like you running out of money. You running out of money to pay the bills or to do it, and you can't get a job, so that you can transmute that fear, so that you can come out on the other side and realize I'm actually going to be okay. And I can actually, I'm actually going to be okay. And I'm actually going to find a way to make it work, and where that is going to bring a different approach here and more determination that you need. Okay. So I think that there's a thought here. It's like something, your worst fear happening, and then you realizing, oh, like it was just an illusion. It wasn't that scary to begin with, because I'm going to be fine, and I'm going to be able to handle myself here. That's going on here at the same time. So that's another thing that I want to note, is that, yeah, I do think this is really powerful. I think something really powerful and beautiful can happen at this full moon in Scorpio, more of an understanding about why a slower approach, but isn't really slow, it's not slow, is necessary here for us to move forward, and more calm and acceptance of it and determination to stay in it. But it doesn't come because it's easy. It comes because of a negative event that forces us inwards to deal with the fear and not escape from it, and to realize that our fears, what our fears are, and that they aren't as bad, and that we really have no choice anyways in life but to move forward in this kind of slower way here. Okay. That's going on. Okay. Right. And that's the answer to the fear, right? The answer to the fear isn't push harder. It's let go more. It's not push harder to make something work. It's let go and allow more. Okay. Super, super important. Right. Because I know, yeah, a lot of people in the comments have been like, I can't just do nothing. I remember a lot of the horoscopes for the past few months have been rest, ease. People have been like, I can't just do nothing. I have things I need to do in my situation. And I feel like the astrology is saying, you think you can't just do nothing. You think you can't just rest, but you have to, and I'm going to force you. And once you do that, then you're going to get the insight that you need. And once you surrender, then you're going to get the insight that you need. Okay. Here. And then you're going to get, right. I think that's another component of the horoscope as well. Maybe to move on is decision making here too. That's going to come after all of this, and a strong inner knowing about what decision to make. So not only, maybe to continue bringing this together, is that at this full moon in Scorpio, we're getting a more deep understanding of taking it slow, even though that's a misnomer, right? To move into a different and better experience of life, and more calm and acceptance around it, and determination to move forward in this slow way. That's not going to come from an easy experience. It's going to come from a hard experience, kind of shaking your beliefs and shaking your ideas about life that's going on. But once you get this acceptance from this hard experience, on the other side is going to be a strong inner knowing about what you need to do, right? Because the worst fear happened and it wasn't bad, right? Or the worst fear happened, you're still standing. It's going to come an insight here about what to do and the right decision to make that's going to help you in your situation to move it forward. Right? And it doesn't have to be a lot of decisions. Remember, less is more. Less is more with everything that's going on. You don't need to do 500 things that aren't going to work. You need to do one thing that will work, right? That's all it's going to take. So this is not 500 decisions. It's maybe like one decision, two decisions that you're going to have a strong inner prompting to about what to do with relationships and money that's going to come naturally, I think, from within yourself, your intuition, a higher power to help you move forward. Okay, the next thing that I want to talk about is what kind of happens after that, because then the energy kind of changes, which I think is starting to build us up more for the new moon in Gemini 2 weeks from now. Okay, and that's going to be the Mercury square Pluto here, and that's the mind. So once we get this more acceptance of a slower approach and the determination to be more slow and calm and the decision to do that, and to adjust our relationships and money in this slower way, then we run into another challenge. Okay, what is that challenge here? Well, I think that challenge is going to be, again, a lot about our mind and our plan. Okay, that's going on. And then we're going to have some about our communication here that's going on, and maybe some, right? Yeah, maybe some work that needs to be done here. Okay, then we run into another issue. What are the other issues we run into that after we make a decision with a strong inner knowing? Well, the issue we run into here is that we start to get too much in our mind, in our head, about what to do and how to do it and when to do it. Okay, that's going on. That can be hard. How exactly might that play out? Well, if you're saying, okay, I'm going to do things now in a slower way, feels slower, right? If I'm going to do things in this slower way, without busy work, without all this other stuff to do, well, then all of a sudden you have more time to think, right? Then all of a sudden you have a little bit more time to be like, maybe, should I do this? Should I not? I mean, now I'm just kind of chilling, just waiting for this thing to happen or whatever, or just trying to like work it all out. Now you have a lot more time to think. And when you have a lot more time to think, that's when your mind can go a little crazy and be like, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to do things more slowly. And so, should I do it this way or should I do it that way? Well, what if I did it this way instead, right? That's when your mind starts to get crazy around what you should do and how you should do it. And not only when things are slower, do you kind of have like more time to think, but when things are slower, it also kind of slows down your thought process as well. So not only do you have more time to think, but your thoughts are kind of slower. And that too, and they become more deliberate. And that too can also kind of mess you up a little bit, because not only do you have all this time to think, but now your thoughts are slower. And so now you start to think, well, should I do this first or that first? And now you start to confuse yourself here about your situation, especially because we're not really used to being calm about our situation here. So I think the mind is kind of making up some issues that might be happening here around our situation. Not only that, but we might start get to overwhelmed with all the steps. So if I'm going to do this first and this second and this third, that feels like a lot, that starts to kick in. Okay, not only that, but the other issue that can come up, number 2, is the overwork. When we start to get too much in our mind and stress too much about the plan, what step am I going to do when this feels like so many steps? Then we start to get back into hard work. Here, where we feel like we have to do a lot, right? Maybe the busy work. We feel like we have to do a lot more than we really need to do for our situation here, and where we start being more critical and having less fun, right? And the whole point of what we're trying to do now is to do less easier, right? We're trying to do less things, but in a way that's easier. And so this is going to throw us back into hard work, right? Because a big thing also in my videos theme for the past few weeks has also been around letting life be fun, right? And doing things that are easy and fun and simple and more part of your heart. Well, when you start to get to thinking and now you're trying to get a plan because your thoughts are slowing down, then all of a sudden you can make things harder for yourself instead of easier, and start to add more work on your plate here too. That's also not what needs to be done and doesn't feel very good. either. Okay, that's happening there. Not only that, but we're also going to get another issue now, the third and last one I'm going to mention around communication, where we start to feel like we either don't know what to say here to either fix our situation, or like we haven't been saying things that we need, because communication is essential to making things happen in our lives here. That's going on, or make it critical of other people who we feel may or haven't been hearing us here as well. That can also be a bit challenging too, and bring out frustrating thoughts, speech, arguments, things of that sort. So there's that too that's starting to emerge, right? At this full moon in Scorpio, we start to understand more what our fear is around doing things in a new way to move forward, especially that slower, and get more calm and more motivated to do things in this slower way. Here, that's going on. Okay, not because it was easy, but because we actually had a negative event forcing us to deal with the fear. And once we deal with that fear and become more calm and accepting of this slower approach, we then start to realize that we're okay, and to get more insights about what to do next with our life and relationships and money in order to change it. But as we're moving forward with this insight and more strength in this slower approach to change our life with relationships and money, then we have a lot of time to think. A lot of time to think, and now our thoughts are slower, and now we're starting to get all bungled up in our mind about our plan and our details, and should we do this and when, and all of this, and now all the steps, they feel so long that we start to get thrown back into hard work, out of ease, out of fun, out of simple, and more into just busy work, just adding busy stuff on that doesn't really matter here, and really stressed out because we're not asking for help. Maybe that's a part of it, the communication. We're not asking for help, or haven't been letting other people in and what's really going on with us with relationships and money, that we may blurt out and cause arguments. Okay. But I want to note here, this second part that I'm now talking about, which is the Mercury-Pluto with the mind, the plan, the communication, and the work, is not because we're not okay with a slower approach. It's not because all of a sudden we're like, oh, this is too slow. It's not because all of a sudden we're like, oh, this is too slow. I want to speed up again. I want to speed up again, and I want to force and push things. It's not really because of that, although maybe some of you might have a tendency towards that. It could creep in again, I should say. But I think it's more because we are becoming more okay with going slow. We're becoming more okay with going slow here, which is bringing that. So that's the thing that I want to note. These issues with the communication, the mind, the plan, the work is not necessarily happening because we're trying to rush and force things, even though maybe for some of you, I think it's more so happening because we're finally allowing ourselves to slow down and be calm. And we're not used to slowing down and be calm, and that's giving us lots of time to think. That's getting us in our head, throwing us backwards, and because we feel like maybe we haven't been heard in the way that we need, right? Or haven't been communicating more effectively about the things that we need to maybe get other people and things to help us, okay? That's going on. Hey, the next thing I want to say is that this stuff here that I'm talking about with the mind, the plan, the communication, and the work, is happening around this full moon in Scorpio, right? But is not, I want to say, is happening around this full moon in Scorpio, but I feel like is not the center conflict of it. I think the center conflict of it is like conquering our fear. Is conquering our fear around things. To me, this part around the mind, the plan, the communication, the work is more new moon in Gemini. That lunar month is what we're moving into, is what we're going to have to learn how to resolve more. So it's showing up here. It's showing up here early because a result of the full moon, but it's something that's going to take a little bit longer to resolve over the course of the next 4 to 6 weeks. Here, we're going to work through that. Okay. And of course, the advice on how to resolve that, as I did state, which I'm sure we'll talk more about, is to be more playful and more flexible with the situation, and to communicate more frequently, and to loosen up on your belief systems, on your ideas, on your mindset here, and adjust your thoughts of kind of how you thought your life would go here. So I think it's a little bit of both here that's kind of going on. Okay. Okay. And to keep that in mind, this full moon in Scorpio, in my opinion, is mostly about becoming more accepting and at peace with a slower approach as we change our life for the better, and more determined in that slower approach here, and conquering any fears around that, which may come by a negative event, forcing us into our fears to truly face them and overcome them. Okay. And once we truly face and overcome our fears, which I think will happen at this full moon in Scorpio around this slower approach, then we're going to get, I think, a more clear insight from our higher self that will come naturally about what decision to make to adjust our life with relationships and money for the better to move it forward. That will be good, but then will cause us to get overwhelmed by the details, by the steps, fall back into hard work, and have issues with communication not being heard that are going to start to take more focus next horoscope video that I'll talk to you on the new moon in Gemini. Okay. That's going on, and to understand that, right? That we're going to have to be more flexible and loose around. Okay. Do I want to give you any examples here? Sorry, I didn't realize this video has gone on for so long. Any other examples that I want to give you here? I mean, yeah, I gave you one already about the money. Maybe some of you just are having problems with money. You don't have a job, or you can't find a job with money. Well, what could happen this month is that the job never comes. It just never comes. The money never comes. And then you're kind of forced to face that difficult event. And from that difficult event, you then realize it's not as bad as you thought, and that you can handle it, and you get an insight about how to handle it, right? How to handle that situation suddenly, and how to handle it suddenly in a different way that's slower and easier, that then you start to get stressed out about because there's so many steps and the communication there. Okay. And yeah, the insight about how to handle that loss of money more slowly, maybe to just, be a little more discerning about the jobs you apply to or something like that. Okay. How else could this be? Maybe this is like a relationship issue. Maybe some of you are having, there's an important person in your life and you haven't really been on the same page, and it's just been taking a long time to kind of turn that relationship around. Well, what could happen is that there could be some big issue with the relationship that could come up with this full moon in Scorpio. It's not turning around in the way that you want. Maybe it takes a step backwards, that relationship, or you get into a big argument here that's going on. But from that argument with that relationship, you then all of a sudden start to realize exactly what needs to be done. Maybe you need to leave the relationship. Maybe you need to do the relationship differently. Maybe you need to have separate homes or whatever it is. Here, you get to know exactly what needs to be done with that relationship in order to fix it, and you start to do it, but then you start to get frustrated because it just so many steps here, and there's a lot of work in order to fix it. And maybe you feel like there's certain things that haven't been communicated about with that relationship in the past that maybe now you feel like you need to be said that weren't said before, here, in order to kind of bring more things together and to be a little more flexible on. So it could be a situation like that. Maybe this is a house situation. Some of you are looking for homes. You're worried that you're never going to find a home, or that your home situation and who you live with is going to get worse. Well, that could actually happen at this moment in Scorpio. You could actually have that fear around your home situation occur. And then where you don't find the home you want, or something goes on, and then all of a sudden you can realize that you're okay. You're stronger than you thought when it comes to dealing with this situation here. And you could get a sudden insight about what you need to do next, where you need to move, how you need to move, and what way you need to move, and start to take action towards that in a more slow, deliberate way, which is good. But then you can just get frustrated at how many steps it might take in order for you to move forward, or how much communication it might require, maybe to re-communicate things you didn't communicate about here that's happening. So it could be something of that sort. Okay, and not only that, another example could be here, a doctor situation. Maybe some of you have like a health issue here, and maybe some of you are worried that like maybe your health is gonna get worse or whatever, or something bad's gonna happen. And maybe what occurs is that maybe something does. Maybe it does happen at this full moon in Scorpio, where some challenging thing does happen with your health. But from that difficult situation, you then suddenly realize like you can handle it, and you suddenly get an insight about what exactly to do to kind of fix that situation with your health, which I think is good. But then you get frustrated because maybe there's just a lot of steps to do, in order to bring it together, and it's a lot of work to fix the health, and maybe you got to recommunicate some things with a doctor or with other people. That's kind of frustrating here as well. So it could bring some of that. Okay. So it could be those kind of situations. It could be one of those, could be a few of those, could be one I didn't mention, but that's the kind of vibe that I'm getting from this full moon in Scorpio is like things are going slow, feel like they're going slow. They're not actually going slow. They just feel like they're going slow. And then a challenge kind of happens that makes us realize that this approach is the best way and we're going to be fine and we can handle ourselves, even though there's just a lot of steps in communication that needs to be done after, you know? Another thought that came to me while I was giving those examples, right? Because maybe some of you are like, I thought you said life is getting better. And it is. I still believe that. July of this year, right? It's not July yet. July of 2025, things are getting better. But sometimes, you know, in order for things to get better, we need to root out all of the things that aren't working. And so I think that this is a situation here where it's like things are getting better. They are, but maybe there's things in our situation that aren't working, or mindsets and beliefs and habits that we've let linger for too long, and it's their time to die. They need to die. Full moon in Scorpio. Scorpio is about death. It's like a lot of our fears need to die. A lot of these old mindsets about how we need to do life, they need to die. A lot of these things, and maybe there are some things with relationships and money that need to end. Here in order for us to move forward. So I think that's another thought. This challenging thing that I'm mentioning happening here is not because things aren't getting better. They are. July, it's not too much longer. July is very soon here. But in order for that to get better, this mindset and these beliefs around like, I can't go slow, I can't take it easy or else the world's going to cave in. I'm not going to have money. I'm not going to have all this stuff. That needs to end, that mindset, so that something else better can be born here as we move forward, because you know, we can't move into a new, different, and better experience of life if we got all the old negative mindsets that are going to keep us stuck, you know. And that's not me trying to say it. Like, I'm not trying to discount your concerns, because a lot of these are real concerns of like, I won't have the money, I won't have this, I'm worried about my physical safety, right? These are real concerns that you have. So I'm not trying to downplay those, but what I am trying to say is that there are simply times in life when we have to trust and surrender and lean on God, Spirit, and the divine in order to get us through here. That maybe as humans is hard for us to understand, but in a divine perspective is the case, especially with now the North Node is in Scorpio, the North Node is in Pisces, right? And the North Node in Pisces will do that to you. The North Node in Pisces will do that to you. We'll take every single option, every single path, every single action, every single thing you thought you could do to improve your situation. We'll take everything away, so that all that's left is for you to just trust and live on a whim that just something will work out and that you'll just be okay. You know, that's not me trying to say it. It's the North Node in Pisces, which is where it now is here, so that you can kind of come into a very different way of thinking and being in your life. So this isn't meant to scare you here. It's meant to bring something much better. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take a look at your inside degree. Maybe I'll do that quickly for you here. The inside degree, this full moon is in Scorpio at 22 degrees. And because of that, I think the degree of before and after can all be irrelevant. Also, they were not written by me. They were written by someone else named Elias Lonsdale, who channeled the meanings of the degrees from spirit that I think can all be relevant. So let's take a look. Which one do I want to look at? Let's do 22 Scorpio, because the video is going on long here. We've got this, and that's the degree of the actual full moon itself. It says, you take everything you experience and all its roughage just as it is, and you form a vessel that is hardy and strong and enduring, and you put all of yourself into it. You leave nothing out. With fervor and intent, you put in there all the darkness and every difficult emotion you have got. For you're the quintessential example of what it's been like around here and how it feels. Okay, so what does this indicate to me? This indicates to me there's a lot of dark emotions going on there. Put in all darkness and every difficult emotion you've got. Not only does this to me indicate dark and difficult emotions, but it also indicates us being strong enough to handle them, right? We have a vessel that's hardy and strong, okay? Because we've learned our lessons, right? We know what it is like around here, is what it says. Okay, the collective karma, choose carefully those who can merge with what everybody's going through and by sheer guts, take it further, perhaps toward mutational breakthrough. To qualify, you have to grind yourself to bits with rude honesty, even at your own expense, because this is how it is. No shortcuts, no easy answers. Emotionally, this is the depth experience at its most intense. So do you see here, this degree says negative feelings, negative emotions, most intense. That's going on here. Okay. But where you're strong enough to handle it, whether you realize it or not yet, you're strong enough to handle it here. That's what it says to me. Not only does it say you're strong enough to handle it, but it says that you are chosen carefully. The collective karmas choose carefully who they can merge with. If you're feeling difficult, if you're feeling a hard time, you were, maybe this is the word I put it, you were chosen for this, here because you can handle it and because you have been learning the lessons. Okay. Not only that, but this degree also says breakthroughs coming because of it. Okay. Also, let's read the last few sentences. There is an evolutionary drive of overwhelming power pushing you through the worst. And along this pathway, you will definitely find out what you are made of and what has been stopping everybody and whether you have it in you to start things off again in a different direction in the earth crucible with no place to hide. I feel like this full moon in Scorpio is like spirit, the universe, giving you all your fears, your worst fears, only for you to realize like you can do it. You can do it. And it's not, it's not as much to be afraid of as you thought. And to give you a breakthrough to get you onto the other side, to kind of wake you up to do things differently. And you're getting this challenge because you can handle it, especially if you're here watching my videos and have been doing the work and all of that, to do it. Yeah. Anything else? Sure, let's read 23 Scorpio. I think this can also be relevant for the Mercury stuff and maybe bring up some new thoughts here. It says, the inside of things takes charge when the ego self is out of the picture and we are free to go with our fancy. The outer things become purely symbolic, just one way to do it. When the formative soul has its way, the world is recreated in a different image, eliminating the usual mental considerations. The formative soul sticks to how things feels inside and pushes for a world that matches the inner pictures. I think too, there's also something about 23 degrees Scorpio that's kind of like getting out of your own way and tuning in more to the good emotions on the inside, or an intuition here that's going on. Deeply driven to move out beyond the known into other realities, a resourcefulness that knows no bounds, able to turn anything back into what it was meant to be. In the process, you crack through every kind of consensus agreement, becoming an outlaw. Fused with core existence and drawing the energy out of empty forms into what is here. When you can feel the magic and know it is real, it is the touchstone to make it all real again. So I get from 23 degrees Scorpio that maybe from this breakthrough or from this situation, you're going to learn, to kind of get out of your own way and stop tripping yourself up and to focus more on the good feelings like the hope and the faith here. And that's going to help you to kind of turn things around, It's going to help you to turn things around. We're coming back to life. Maybe some old mindsets have to die with the Scorpio so that we can transform and come back to life on the other side, which we're going to do in July, I think. Okay, now let me go ahead and let me look at your card here. Your card is the Knight of Wands here upright. And at the bottom of the deck, we've got the Hanged Man upright here. Now, this is interesting. Here, this Knight of Wands, typically I see the Knight of Wands is actually a fast card, moving fastly and moving swiftly, but actually not this Knight of Wands in this deck, because the Knight of Wands in this deck has a different picture, and the picture is them calmly on a river with a puppy. Here, that's going on. This does not symbolize fast to me, the picture on it, or swift to me. Here, it also doesn't symbolize frantic. This to me is, but he's still moving, right? He's in a canoe, right? The canoe, and he's moving the canoe. The canoe's still moving, okay? But it's just calm. It's just calm and peaceful. So I think that that's my thought here, is that we need to still move forward to do things that are important to us, just in a more calm and peaceful way than we were before, without the stress, without the anxiety, without the hurry, without the rush, enjoying more of the small things and the moment and the feeling of it all here as we move forward. That's what we need to do. And that's what this full moon in Scorpio is trying to get you to realize. Like, you don't have to push as much as you think you do. And you don't have to be as stressed as much as you think you do. And to come out in this way, in a more enduring, permanent way, as moving forward and more calmly. Okay, we've also got the Hanged Man at the bottom of the deck here. The Hanged Man can indicate needing a different perspective here as well. That's going on, and seeing things differently. And again, I think that's what this full moon in Scorpio is trying to do. It's trying to tell us, like, look, you need to do things, yes, but stop rushing, forcing, pushing. They need to be done calm, jovial, fun, here that's happening, you know, peaceful in a canoe on the river. That's the way they need to be done. And in order for you to understand it, to get that through your head, which has been trying to get through your head, you may need a different perspective. You may need to see things differently. You may need something to shake you up. He's turned upside down, this guy. You may need something to shake you up a little bit, to turn your world upside down here, in order for you to see that you don't have to rush, and that going slow, easy, calm is the best way forward, that it is that you need. And not only that, but another thought about the Hanged Man, he is upside down here in this card, right? Your world needs to be turned upside down, but the image in this card too is also kind of interesting. Even though he's upside down, he's doing like a yoga pose, you know, here, the way he's kind of standing on his head or with his arms here too. And so I also see that as well about the situation, where we're either learning like a new skill, a new way of standing, a new way of standing on our own, so to speak, in this situation here that's needed in order to handle our situation differently. And also about us, you know, either learning a skill or realizing that we can handle challenges in a different way that's better for us, you know, exercising new muscles. So I think that's another thought. We got to go calmer, easier, slower. Still do things, but calmer, easier, slower, more enjoyable here. You may need a situation to give you a different, that turns your world upside down, to give you the different perspective in order to get there. And that different situation may make you realize you actually have more skills or more muscles to do things in this slower way than it is that you think, and that you can actually hold the weight here in order to move forward more gracefully that it is that you need. Okay, and I think that's all I'm going to say there. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. I wish you all the best this full moon in Scorpio, and I will talk to you 2 weeks from now at that new moon in Gemini.